Order.
The ayes to the right, 256. The noes to the left, 350.
The ayes to the right, 256. The noes to the left, 350. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. Before I call new clause 6, just another reminder, please, backbenchers, leave behind me, front benchers in front. You're okay, Robert Halfon. We now come to new clause 6. I call Caroline Lucas to move new clause 6 formally. The question is that new clause 6 be added to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Or the contrary, no. No. Division, clear the lobby. The question is that new clause 6 be added to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Or the contrary, no. No. Tell us for the ayes, Jeff Smith, Bamba Charalambas. Tell us for the noes, Eddie Hughes and Leo Doherty. Lock the doors. Order. Order.
The ayes to the right, 258. The noes to the left, 351.
The ayes to the right, 258. The noes to the left, 351. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. We now come to new clause 7, and I call Geoffrey Donaldson to move new clause 7 formally. The question is that new clause 7 be added to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Or the contrary, no. 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 Division, clear the lobby. The question is that new clause 7 be added to the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Or the contrary, no. No. Tell us for the ayes, Jeff Smith and Bamba Sharalambas. Tell us for the noes, Tom Pursglove and T.C. Davis.
Lock the doors. Order! Order!
The ayes to the right, 264. The noes to the left, 342.
The ayes to the right, 264. The noes to the left, 342. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. We now come to government amendments up to clause 45. I call the Minister to move amendments 31, 32, 19, 33 to 38, 20 to 26 and 1 to 11 formally. Minister. The question is that government amendments 31, 32, 19, 33 to 38, 20 to 26 and 1 to 11 be made. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Mr. Speaker has selected Amendment 16 for separate decision. I call Stephen Farry to move Amendment 16.
Thank you. I beg to move formally.
The question is that Amendment 16 be made. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Division, clear the lobby. Okay. Already. Order. The question is that Amendment 16 be made. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. Tell us for the ayes, Alistair Carmichael and Wendy Chamberlain. Tell us for the noes, Tom Pursglove and David T.C. Davis. The doors. Order! Order!
The ayes to the right, 256. The noes to the left, 354.
The ayes to the right, 256. The noes to the left, 354. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock. We now come to government amendments to clause 45. I call the Minister to move amendments 12, 13, 15 and 14 formally. The question is that government amendments 12, 13, 15 and 14 be made. As many as that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the That's considerably better. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to Government New Schedule 1. I call the Minister to move New Schedule 1.
Formally.
The question is that Government New Schedule 1 be added to the bill. As many as that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. So we now come to the remaining government amendments 27 and 28. I call the Minister to move amendments 27 and 28 formally. The question is that government amendments 27 and 28 be made. As many of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. And that concludes proceedings on the report stage of the bill. Order. Order. I don't think there's any need to suspend the House because I see that, with one notable exception, all colleagues who are intending to take part in the next stage of the bill are already present, and those who are not have left. Third reading?
Now.
I inform the House that Mr. Speaker has selected the reasoned amendment in the name of Ian Blackford. Minister to move third reading, Mr. Alok Sharma.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the UK Internal Market Bill be now read for a third time. Madam Deputy Speaker, over 150 members and right honourable members have spoken during the passage of this bill so far. We've had around 30 hours of often passionate debate, and I pay tribute to members across the House for their contributions. The Public Bill Office has been unstinting in its support to all members and officials across government, and I'm incredibly grateful for all their work. I'd also particularly like to thank my honourable friends, the Minister for Small Business, Consumers and Labour Markets, the Minister for the Constitution and Devolution, and the Minister for the Northern Ireland Office. They have steered this bill ably through the committee and report stages. Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK internal market is the bedrock of our shared economic and social prosperity as a country. Since the Acts of Union, it has been the source of unhindered and open trade, which has supported growth and safeguarded livelihoods and businesses. It demonstrates that as a union, our country is greater than the sum of its parts. And since 1973, EU law has acted as the cohering force for the UK internal market. In 2016, the British people voted to leave the European Union, which this government delivered in January. And as we leave the transition period at the end of this year, the government will leave the European Union's legal jurisdiction once and for all. And we need to replace this law to continue the smooth functioning of our centuries-old internal market, whilst of course also ensuring that devolved administrations benefit from a power surge from Brussels. Now, yes, of course.
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend for giving way. The fact is that there is nothing in this bill that in any way compromises the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that it is deeply regrettable that some people, for political purposes, seek to unnecessarily scaremonger, and that they should desist from doing so?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend has made an important point, and let me come on to that. So, of course, as I said, we need to replace this law to continue the smooth functioning of our centuries-old internal market, whilst also ensuring that devolved administrations benefit from that power surge from Brussels. Now, the UK Internal Market Bill does precisely that. Our approach will give businesses the regulatory clarity and certainty they want. It will ensure that the cost of doing business in the UK stays as low as possible, and it will do so without damaging and costly regulatory barriers emerging between the different parts of the United Kingdom. Madam Deputy Speaker, I cannot overstate the importance of this economic continuity bill, especially as we seek to recover from COVID-19. It is ultimately designed to safeguard jobs and livelihoods, protect businesses, give choice to consumers, and continue to showcase the United Kingdom as a beacon for inward investment. That is why this legislation is so vital. Now, my department and I, along with colleagues across government, have spoken to a large number of businesses and business representative organisations across the whole of the United Kingdom about our proposals to safeguard our internal market. And businesses have overwhelmingly backed our approach. The British Chambers of Commerce have stressed that a fragmented, I quote, a fragmented system would create additional costs, bureaucracy, and supply chain challenges that could disrupt operations for firms across the United Kingdom. NFU Scotland has emphasised the importance of protecting the UK internal market, stating NFU Scotland's fundamental priority is the clear interest of Scottish agriculture as well as the food and drink sector it underpins. And this is to ensure that the UK internal market effectively operates as it does now. I could go on, Madam Deputy Speaker. Made UK has noted that it's particularly important to manufacturers. They can trade simply and effectively across all parts of the United Kingdom. The business community is clear. We must continue to safeguard the sanctity of the seamless UK internal market. Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill also respects and upholds the devolution settlements on the... Well, the Honourable Gentleman says it doesn't. He is going to get a large number of powers, an unprecedented level of powers back after the transition period. If he doesn't want them, he ought to stand up and say that. But the reality, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the reason he is against this bill is because he wants to be shackled to the European Union forever. That is the reason he's against this. On the contrary, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Gentleman says from a central position that I'm talking nonsense. He just needs to reread his second reading speech and he will see it's full of inaccuracies. We've engaged in good faith with devolved administrations throughout the passage of this bill. It was very unfortunate that the Scottish Government decided to walk away from the discussions on the internal market last year. And as I said, we want to continue to work constructively. Let me turn briefly to the Northern Ireland elements of this business bill. That's attracted a disproportionate amount of interest and commentary. I and every member of the government benches stood on a manifesto commitment to ensure that Northern Ireland businesses and producers enjoyed unfettered access to the rest of the United Kingdom. And that in the implementation of our Brexit deal, we would maintain and strengthen the integrity and smooth operation of our internal market. Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill delivers on these commitments. And we've also been clear that we must protect the gains of the peace process and maintain the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. Yes, of course, I give way.
Minister for giving way, and of course he is absolutely right. This bill has no impact at all on the Good Friday Agreement, and indeed is only helpful to the economy in Northern Ireland, but only helpful in a limited way. He talks about access to the UK internal market and access for Northern Ireland goods going into GB. Can he say something about the opposite direction, where Northern Ireland depends so highly upon imports from GB, and yet there's no mention of those safeguards to stop trade being blocked in that direction?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, he knows that discussions continue, and I know he and I have also had these discussions as well. But he makes the point that this is a business bill, and I hope every member like him will support the bill when it goes to its third reading. I want to say that the reason that we have taken powers to ensure that in the event we do not reach an agreement with our EU friends on how to implement the protocol is so that we are able to deliver on promises in our manifesto and the command paper. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a legal safety net which clarifies our position on the Northern Ireland Protocol, protecting our union, businesses and jobs. I give way.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Irish Foreign Minister has said recently that this bill undermines the EU withdrawal bill, has damaged trust between the Irish and UK negotiating teams, and is damaging Britain's reputation globally. Does this give the Minister any cause for concern?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I say this has been debated over a long passage of this bill in this House, and of course, as she will know and other members will know, during the committee stage we introduced an amendment that provides a break glass mechanism. And this ensures that this safety net will only come into force if a motion in this House is passed with a requirement for a take-note debate in the other place. And I hope that will allow her to vote for this bill at third reading. Madam Deputy Speaker, I won't, I'm now winding up. Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill provides the certainty that businesses want and need to invest and create jobs. It helps maintain high standards and choice for consumers whilst keeping prices down. It reaffirms our commitment to devolution, supporting one of the biggest transfers of power to the devolved administrations. It allows the government to invest further across communities across the United Kingdom. This is about levelling up across the whole of the UK and strengthening our precious union, which some would want to put at risk. I, Madam Speaker, am a unionist, as is the right honourable gentleman. Neither of us are separatists. Above all, this bill continues to preserve the UK internal market that has been an engine of growth and prosperity for centuries. In voting for this bill, we protect our constituents' jobs, businesses and livelihoods, and I commend it to the House.
The question is that the bill be now read the third time. Ed Miliband.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let me join the Business Secretary in paying tribute to the Public Bill Office for the work they've done, and I also want to profoundly thank my honourable friends, the member for Manchester Central and Sheffield Central, for the incredible hard work they did during the committee and report stage of this bill. And let me also say to the Business Secretary, I'm pleased to see him back in his place for the third reading of this bill. I have to say to him, I'm afraid to report that the person deputising for him at second reading didn't do a great job. And next time the Prime Minister asks to fill in for him, I suggest he tells him to go elsewhere, and he'll do a very fine job. Thank you. Let me go, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the heart of the debates around this bill. We support the principle of the internal market, but there are two profound flaws at the heart of this bill, and that's why we'll be voting against it tonight. On devolution, we on this side believe deeply in our union. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, the strength of our union lies in sharing power, not centralising it. And this bill does not learn that lesson. It makes a choice to impose the rule that the lowest regulatory standard in one parliament must be the standard for all without a proper voice for the devolved administrations. And I have read carefully the debates at committee and report stage on this, and there has been no proper answer forthcoming from government about why they did not seek to legislate for the common frameworks as they could easily have done. Nor, Madam Deputy Speaker, can they explain why they are taking such broad powers over public spending in specific devolved areas of competence. I have to say to the Business Secretary, I will give way to the Honourable Lady.
To the Right Honourable Gentleman for giving way. He's making a powerful speech. Does he agree with me that the illustrious former leader of the Labour Party in Scotland and Scotland's First Minister under devolution, Donald Dewar's great scheme of devolution was that every power would be devolved unless it was specifically reserved? And what's wrong with this bill is it gives the British government the power to override devolved powers. That's the heart of the matter.
I think there is an important point here, which is that if you take the example of animal welfare or food safety, these powers remain devolved, but they're devolved in name only because by imposing the lowest standard, the minimum standard becoming the lowest standard for all legislatures, it makes those powers, undermines those powers seriously. I have to say to the Business Secretary, I fear this bill will only strengthen the hand of those who want to break up the UK. On international law, nobody should be in any doubt about the damage already done by this bill. I don't blame the Business Secretary, but this law-breaking bill has been noticed around the world. Not just the Irish government, not just our EU negotiating partners, not just Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, who they can dismiss. Even President Trump's Northern Ireland envoy, Mick Mulvaney, visited the Republic of Ireland yesterday, and he said this: I think anyone who looks at the situation with the UK Internal Market Bill understands there could be a series of events that could put the Good Friday Agreement at risk. Madam Deputy Speaker, when the Trump administration starts expressing concern about your adherence to international agreements and the rule of law, you know you are in trouble. That is how bad, I'm going to carry on. That is how bad this bill is. And in the words, I think it's important to hear the words of the Right Honourable Member for Maidenhead in her coruscating and brilliant speech at committee stage. And I know they're rolling their eyes about the former Prime Minister. That she said this: the government are acting recklessly and irresponsibly with no thought to the long-term impact on the United Kingdom's standing in the world. That is what a former Prime Minister of the last Prime Minister, the previous Prime Minister of this country said. But I want to develop... I will give way to him, yeah, I will.
Does the Right Honourable Gentleman accept that, in fact, in the past there have been substantial breaches of international law by Labour governments as well as by other ones? And furthermore, does he believe that the Iraq War was lawful?
Madam Deputy Speaker, this is unprecedented in the following sense. The government is coming along, breaking an international agreement they signed less than a year ago. And I've heard the Honourable Gentleman come in, I've read the debates on this. He certainly has not produced an example in any way remotely similar to what is happening in this bill. But Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to develop my argument because there's a really important point that I think has been maybe understated in the debate since second reading. These clauses are not simply wrong, as so many people on both sides of the House, I think, recognise. They are not simply unnecessary, because the protocol has mechanisms to deal with the issues at hand, but there has been a notable event since second reading that has exposed the government strategy even further. That is the cancellation of the budget. Let us recall the government's fig leaf designed to hide their embarrassment. This was the issue of at-risk goods travelling from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. The whole case made by the Prime Minister was that this bill was necessary to prevent the blockade of goods from GB into NI. The threat was described as extraordinary and the very reason to break international law. But the measures, as we now know, to break the law in this bill do not, as he had to admit at second reading, deal with the issue of GB to NI trade. So what was the excuse, Madam Deputy Speaker? That GB to NI issues will be dealt with in the finance bill. Indeed, this was explicit in the statement put out on the 17th of September by the government. Further measures will be set out in the finance bill relating to tariffs on GB-NI movements, including the same parliamentary process that the government has committed to for the UK IM bill. Madam Deputy Speaker, in case it escapes the House's attention, The budget has been cancelled, and so has the finance bill. So where now is the mechanism to deal with this extraordinary threat that we face as a country? Can anyone on the government side tell me where it is? This is this extraordinary threat that this country is facing. It's got to be dealt with, but there is no legislation today that we are considering on it, and there's no legislation even in view. I'll give way to the Business Secretary if he'd like to tell me how this is going to be dealt with. There's no answer, Madam Deputy Speaker, no, he doesn't. He'd prefer not to. I don't blame the Business Secretary, because let's be clear what's happened here. The legislative hooligans in Downing Street who dreamed this up have moved on. They've moved on to something else, but the bill is still with us. And so, Madam Deputy Speaker, we're going through all this pain, all this grief, all this damage to our international reputation. And the central argument on which it is based is not even covered by any legislation. Now, what are we to conclude then? That this was all a charade? A dead cat strategy, as I think it's known, to distract attention? That it was a trap designed to pretend that we were rerunning Remain versus Leave? Or maybe, Madam Deputy Speaker, it was a strategy for the government to pretend to its backbenchers that the government was willing to break the law, to soften them up, to accept concessions in the end game of the negotiations with the EU. Madam Deputy Speaker, whatever the excuse, all of them reflect so badly on this government. We are at a grave national moment. Our gravest for generations was of coronavirus. We're trying to conclude a Brexit deal vital for our country. We need new trade deals where our word is our bond. And this government plays these appalling games, thinking so little of their backbenchers that they can pull the wool over their eyes, willing to resile from a treaty they signed for a day's headlines, playing fast and loose with the law for short-term gain. Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill will get its majority and go to the other place. But their lordships should know that across this House there is deep concern about it. This has been shown again and again by good people on all sides of the House in the last few weeks. I urge the other place to bring this bill into compliance with the rule of law and salvage our reputation. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, we in the House of Commons have a chance tonight to show our concern again. It is an indefensible bill. It damages our country. It is wrong and self-defeating. I urge members on all sides to oppose it tonight.
Sir Robert Neal.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Right Honourable Gentleman spoke as always with great energy and passion. I sometimes regret that perhaps his successor as leader of the Labour Party had not shown anything half as much energy and passion in making the case during the referendum. He wouldn't have the need to be debating this bill at all. But there it is. Moving on thereafter, the reality is we must make sure that as we leave the transition period, we do have a working internal market, and therefore I support the bill in principle. I'm delighted to see the Business Secretary there. I hope he'll take on board a point which I know his junior minister, my honourable friend, the member for Sutton Ching, has noted. But that's this: as we build upon a working internal market, I hope we can see how we can have ways in which we can expand that to other close parts of the British family who are aligned with us, who have great synergy with us. So to make sure, for example, that the Crown dependencies, the Isle of Man and the Channel Islands, who link very closely already to financial services and many other parts of our economy, are able to access that market. And in particular, declaring my interest as chairman of your parliamentary party group, that we make sure that our overseas territory of Gibraltar has clear access, free and unfettered access to a UK internal market too. They have stood with Britain, despite the fact that, like me, they didn't want to be in this situation. I think we owe them to make sure that they are not allowed to become collateral damage economically or in other respects as a result of the decision that we took. So I hope you'll actively engage with the Government of Gibraltar to find ways in which we can make sure that they are able to participate fully in that market and benefit from it. In relation to the provisions in relation to Northern Ireland, it's well enough known that there's caused me concern, very great concern, and many others in their original form. I'm grateful for the approach that the government has adopted and the clarifications that we have had as to their approach and the changes which the government has been willing to make. I won't pretend that we have perhaps solved every problem there. I'm not going to do a rerun of the discussion we had at report stage as to that. But but I just gently say this. Sovereignty and power and reserve powers are generally best used sparingly, lightly, and with great deliberation. And I hope that having taken certain powers, we will make sure through our negotiations that we never had need to use them, because the damage would be real were we to do so. And secondly, that we exercise them with restraint, because like it or not, and necessary or perhaps not, even accepting my honourable friend's proposition that we do need a break gas in emergency provision, and I understand that, we do have to reflect that it has, for whatever reason, created concern amongst many of our closest allies and neighbours, people with whom we need to engage. And I do want to be in a position where we can, for example, advance the excellent Judge Joanna Corner's candidature for the International Court with clear hands to say that we are generally committed to the rule of international law, that we can generally say in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and other places that we remain committed to the rule of law internationally. I think time is short. I hope you'll forgive me. I normally try and do, but time is very short. I hope that we'll be able to say, as a number of honourable friends of mine have been able to do in the Council of Europe, that we are, despite, for example, the difference over prisoner voting rights, committed to that. And we must make sure that we don't allow anything to undermine that, because reputations take a time to build. Ours is an excellent one in international legal circles, and we don't want it to be lost. The Secretary of State made a fair point about the desire for business continuity, and also for the UK to remain a beacon for inward investment. Well, as well as, of course, a benign tax regime and regulatory regime, the other, perhaps the most important reason that people invest here is the fact that we're regarded as a safe jurisdiction in legal terms, and a safe polity as well, in which to invest, because we do not behave in an arbitrary manner. And therefore, I hope that we'll be very clear that we will stick rigidly to those clarifications and caveats that we gave in relation to the use of any emergency powers, that they will be done carefully, proportionately, and without ousting the other obligations that we entered into with the withdrawal agreement and the protocol. And the other matter in terms of business continuity is this. It is important too that we rebuild and strengthen our international links, for the practical reason that was actually mentioned by a member opposite in the course of the report stage, and that's the need that to go forward, businesses will need, once we have left the provisions of the Brussels regime, Brussels arrangements of the EU at the end of transition, they'll want to have a ready, efficient and swift means of enforcing contracts, enforcing judgments upon contracts across the EU and with our neighbours. To do that, we at the very least have to join, as a matter of urgency, the Lugano Convention. To achieve membership of the Lugano Convention, we have to have the consent of the European Union, members of the Convention. At the moment, the Commission is recommending the withholding of that consent. The EFTA members have consented. It will be profoundly dangerous and damaging for British business were we not to be able to access Lugano, for all those difficulties that I've pointed out. For any international contract, it will make a huge disadvantage, and would also affect individuals. The woman seeking to get maintenance payment from the absent father who is now in an EU country. The person seeking to pursue a personal injuries claim, where the driver of the vehicle that went into them is in a different jurisdiction. So rebuilding the bridges to make sure we can get back into Lugano may sound prosaic, but is actually profoundly important for the good operation of our legal system once we have left. And sometimes a little less of the poetry is required in government and a little bit more of the prosaic. And I hope we can now move forward into that stage.
Ian Blackfoot.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I also thank the Public Bill Office for the consideration that they have given to the SNP as we've sought to bring amendments forward to this bill. And if I can thank my honourable friend, the member for Inverness, Badenoch and Strathspey, for the work that he has done near Badenoch and Strathspey in the committee stage of the bill. Madam Deputy Speaker, this legislation has been rushed through by the UK Government over the course of the last 2 weeks. This in itself was after a rushed consultation and a total failure to engage with the devolved governments. Madam Deputy Speaker, the United Kingdom shows no respect for the devolved institutions with this bill, and it does not have their consent. We are told that this legislation supposedly seeks to secure the Union. So it is very telling that it has failed to gain the consent of even a single part of that Union.
Hear, hear.
With limited time in this House, parliamentarians have spent hours debating and dissecting this bill. We have attempted to scrutinise every clause and every section in it. Members from all sides of the House have made significant speeches, and a raft of opposition amendments have been brought forward. And yet here we are tonight. Nothing has changed. This bill still does exactly what it set out to do 2 weeks ago. It still breaks international law, and it still breaks devolution. For the absence of doubt, let me make it clear. It breaks devolution. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is the same old with this Tory government. They haven't listened. They haven't taken the chance to change course, and they haven't seen the need to compromise. This government has typically and arrogantly ploughed on. Throughout the passage of this bill, they have voted down and ignored anyone and everyone who has sought to defend devolution and uphold international law. The character of this government is crystal clear. They are consistent in their contempt. Madam Deputy Speaker, as always, we accept and respect our decisions with regard to selection of motions and amendments. But if members refer to the order paper of today, they will see that the government had options available to it that would have perhaps demonstrated it did have some remaining respect for the devolution settlement and the national legislators of these islands. It could have held over third reading until each of the devolved institutions had considered legislative consent motions. That would have been respectful to the devolved institutions. It could have referred this bill for further scrutiny to the Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland select committees. But instead, it insists on using its majority to force this bill through without even pretending it cares what the devolved nations think.
Will you give way?
So I will give way.
I think for giving. Well, I mean, they're getting very agitated about some of this, but isn't that the point? That the real power grab here, the real undermining of the devolution settlement, is the callous disregard for the Sewell Convention, which this government put on a statutory footing and is now completely ignoring. That is one of the fundamental acts that is undermining devolution across these islands.
My honourable friend is quite correct. And, you know, we were told after the referendum in Scotland in 2014 that Scotland's place would be respected, that we were to lead the United Kingdom. And here, Madam Deputy Speaker, we find not just our Parliament in Edinburgh, but the administration in Cardiff and in Northern Ireland are being ignored. We can refuse to give consent, as we are doing to this bill, but the government carries on regardless. Where is that respect for devolution? Where is the respect for the people of Scotland that voted in a referendum in 1997 where 75% of the people of Scotland voted for a parliament? It's not the SNP's parliament, it's not the Scottish Government's parliament. It's the Parliament of the people of Scotland. The Parliament of the people of Scotland, where a Scotland Act was passed that gave powers over devolved matters. And what the government benches refuse to see, what the rest of us can see, that this Parliament is giving itself the power to override the Scottish Parliament in health, in education, in transport and housing. And, you know, well, I can hear the Minister shouting. It's his bill. It's his bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I suggest he reads it. Because clause 46 and 47 are very clear. Powers over infrastructure, including water, electricity, gas, telecommunications, sewage and other services, railway facilities, including rolling stock, roads or other transport facilities, health, education, cultural or sports facilities. The Minister can sit and tell us that it doesn't override devolution while the facts are in the bill. What the government has done has overridden devolution, and quite frankly, I can tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, we in Scotland will be having absolutely none of it. So tonight, just as, and you know, you can chunter and shout all that you like, because at the end of the day, the people in Scotland have been watching what's been going on over the course of the last few months, Scotland being disregarded, the fact that we won the election in Scotland last December on the right of Scotland to choose its own future, that we had no desire to be taken out of the European Union against our will. You can choose in England to do what you want as far as Brexit is concerned, but we do not...
Order. I'm sure the honourable gentleman meant that honourable members can choose, because when he says you, he means me, and he knows that I have no such choice. Ian Blackford.
Making it clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the people in England can choose what they like in this regard. But we do not consent to Scotland being taken out of the European Union. And we have a mandate from the people of Scotland that we have the right to determine our future. And we've got the callous disregard of this government that has so far refused to grant a Section 30 licence that we can have the choice in our own future. And not only are they frustrating the will of the Scottish people to have that referendum in our future, but we now find that they are seeking to take powers back from our Parliament. Now, I can hear a Conservative member saying that you had your referendum. But the point is, Madam Deputy Speaker, when we had our referendum in 2014, we were promised that we would be left as members of the European Union, that we'd be respected within this union, that we were going to get a powerhouse parliament, the strongest parliament in the world. Madam Deputy Speaker, the opposite has happened. And when the facts change, people in Scotland have the right to change their mind. And what the government doesn't seem to recognise is that there is a gathering momentum in Scotland in support for the SNP and support for independence. And they can chortle, because the reality is that many people in 2014 that did not support Scottish independence have rightly changed their minds. And they have the choice of a future of Scotland being a member of the European Union, a law-abiding independent country that accepts our responsibilities in the global world, of creating a fairer society, of coming out of the COVID crisis, of building up our economy. And it's that choice of that clear vision that we offer against what has been done to Scotland by this Conservative government. And I can tell this government that what they are doing with this bill is absolutely determining that the people of Scotland will make that choice. And yes, we will become an independent country, because we want no future with what the Conservatives, the disrespect that we see day in, day out from the Conservative government to our Parliament in Edinburgh.
And I'm very grateful to my right honourable friend, and the more they chortle, the more support for Scottish independence will rise, and they know that. But I heard the Minister saying, but this is Scotland's Parliament too. And she will know, as my right honourable friend will know, today an opinion poll came out. Does the Minister want to know what's in that opinion poll? 4 times as many Scots now support the Scottish Parliament over this Parliament. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that their aggressive unionism of undermining our Parliament has failed, and all it's doing is rising support for independence?
I have to say that my honourable friend is correct, and I'm sure, as I do when he gets back to his constituency and he speaks to people, that we are, I almost have to say, that we're being encouraged by people to get on with it. They've seen enough. They've seen what's happening to Scotland from this Conservative government, and as I said earlier, we're having none of it. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, tonight, just as during second reading, there lies a fundamental choice for every member across this House. This is now the last opportunity and the last chance to salvage some dignity and respect for democracy in this place. Leaving it to the other place would be a complete dereliction of duty. This is the democratically elected House, and it is our job to oppose this undemocratic piece of law.
But notwithstanding that, of course I agree with him about this bill. It's a nonsense. It's a rogue's charter, as I said in a previous debate. But would he also encourage members of the House of Lords, who have historically played a role in defending the rule of law, to make sure that they do their best to improve this legislation if that's possible?
I understand why the right honourable gentleman makes that call. We should not be relying on the members of the House of Lords. They are unelected. But the fact is, this place hasn't done its job to defend the rule of law, hasn't done its job to protect devolution. And I feel for members on the Labour benches that were responsible under Blair's government for bringing devolution in, because everything that was done, everything that was established under that programme is being undermined. And there is a real call to everyone in Scotland, regardless of whether they voted for the SNP in the past, to recognise the maxim that power devolved is power retained. And you know, people in the past have said to me, could Westminster shut down the Scottish Parliament? And I've argued in the past that would be fanciful. Nobody could possibly believe that our Parliament could be attacked in such a way. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, what is happening with this bill is that our Parliament, that's had the support of the people of Scotland, is being usurped. And it's not getting more powers, because actually, read the bill. Read clauses 46 and 47, and read clause 48, which takes away from Scotland the powers that we have overstated. You know, when I look at the government benches, it really is Trump-esque. It is twisting the truth beyond reality.
Will he give way?
I will happily give way.
Would he agree with me that one of the most harmful aspects of this bill is set out in the explanatory notes, where it says that this bill will be a protected enactment under the Scotland Act, the Government of Wales Act, and an entrenched enactment under the Northern Ireland Act 1998, which means it cannot be modified by the devolved legislatures and will not be open to those legislatures to disapply any of the provisions of the bills or to modify their effect. We are stuck with this, and this government can continue to make things worse if they choose to do so. It's taking it out of the Scottish Parliament's hands.
My honourable friend is quite correct, and it's perhaps worth reminding the House in this context that we have the joint ministerial committees. And the joint ministerial committees recognise the responsibility they have to put frameworks in place. And the governments in Scotland, I can hear the honourable lady saying that they have done. And she's quite right about that. Because the government in Edinburgh, in Cardiff and in Belfast recognised the need to work together where it was appropriate in creating the circumstances to make sure there was continuation of a market across these islands. And the commitment that I make, and the commitment that my party and my government makes, is that we will work constructively with the government in London to make sure that that happens. But the rug has been pulled from under that by a UK government that has sought to bring this bill forward, that legislates for the market it wants to create and attacks the fact that we have provisions in Scotland in areas such as environment and food standards and building standards that we can no longer defend, because there will be a race to the bottom and accepting the lowest standards, and there is not a single thing that we can do about it. Not a single thing that we can do to protect our food standards once this takes place. Now, you know, the Minister's shaking his head, but we already have differences, for example, in pasteurised milk. But what will happen post this? We will not have that ability to see the uniqueness of our regulations. What happens in terms of support to our crofters and farmers, for example? Madam Deputy Speaker, the responsibility falls tonight on this House to do the right thing. And I can obviously understand if those, particularly in the government benches, are unwilling to take advice from me and my party. But they would do well to listen to the strength of the argument emanating from some on their own benches. During the committee stage of this bill, the former Prime Minister and member for Maidenhead gave a powerful and insightful analysis of the dangers of this legislation. The member's words are worth repeating for those left on the Conservative benches who are not yet card-carrying members of the Cummings and Prime Minister's ideological cabal. She concluded her remarks by warning, and I quote, "I consider that in introducing clauses 41 to 45, the government are acting recklessly and irresponsibly with no thought to the long-term impact of the United Kingdom's standing in the world. It will lead to untold damage to the United Kingdom's reputation and puts its future at risk. Stark words from the former Prime Minister at what this government is doing to trash the reputation of the United Kingdom. Now, myself and the Right Honourable Member from Maidenhead may not agree on much, but few could deny that these words were not only powerful, they are very likely to be proven prophetic. Madam Deputy Speaker, despite the... Well, you know, I hear a comment too long. Too long, it's not fair on everyone else. I'll tell the Labour front bench what's not fair. What's not fair is what's been done to Scotland tonight. And I have the right, as the leader of the Scottish National Party at Westminster, to make sure our voices are heard, and I will tell this House that tonight the voices of the Scottish National Party will be heard, and will be heard without apology. Madam Deputy Speaker, despite the bluff and bluster that we have repeatedly heard, none of us are fooled that this is some kind of benign business bill. We know the real intent of this legislation. After 21 years of devolution, the Tories are stripping powers from our Scottish Parliament. The Tories did not support devolution, and now they see the popularity of the Scottish Government and they don't like it. And little wonder why, because that support for the Scottish Government stands in direct contrast to the unpopularity of Tory governments from Westminster. Madam Deputy Speaker, earlier today, the Scottish Social Attitudes Survey shows that public trust in the Scottish Government to act in Scotland's best interest at more than 4 times the trust that's shown in the UK Government. The survey conducted in 2019-20 before lockdown shows people were nearly 5 times more likely to say the Scottish Government should have most influence on how the country is run than the UK Government should. 61% of people trusted the Scottish Government to work in Scotland's best interest, compared to a record low of 15%. 15%, Madam Deputy Speaker, for the UK Government. And you can bet your boots after what's happened tonight, it will be a lot lower than the 15% that was recorded.
Madam Deputy Speaker, point of order.
Order, sir.
In order for a member of the member for Lochaber and Ross and Skye to be able to filibuster so much in order to abandon other people being able to input in this debate which is going on at the moment. It's surely not fair on so many people that want to contribute.
That is a reasonable question for the honourable gentleman to ask, but if the honourable gentleman for Ross, Skye and Lochaber were to filibuster, it would not be in order, and I wouldn't allow him to do it. The Right Honourable Gentleman is not filibustering. He is making a very powerful argument, but I do note the Honourable Gentleman's point that the Honourable Gentleman has spoken for more than twice as long as the other front benches, and that he will appreciate that there are a great many other people who would like to make a contribution to this important debate tonight. However, it is not a matter for me. If the Honourable Gentleman has the floor and he can speak for as long as he wishes, but I know that he is both honourable and a gentleman, and that he will bear in mind that while he has the floor, other people do not have the opportunity to speak. Mr. Blackford.
Indeed, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I think we had a demonstration there from the Conservative benches that members from Scotland should sit down and shut up, that we shouldn't be heard in this House. But I can say to the honourable gentleman, there's a very easy fix. There's a very easy fix to that. Let's have the Section 30 order, let's have the referendum in Scottish independence, and we can say goodbye to you. Thank you and good night. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster does not care for the polling numbers that I referenced, and he does not care for devolution. He, after all, is the architect of this bill. Parliamentary etiquette, my goodness. Devolution's been butchered, and I hear Conservative members talking about etiquette. What a load of keech. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster has set out his agenda. Scotland is to be dealt with. the Scottish Parliament is to have its wings clipped. Westminster is to take back control and wants to give itself spending powers over our devolved matters.
I'm just interested in my right honourable friend's view on the subject of Keith, and this idea that if honourable gentlemen and right honourable gentlemen and ladies on the other side want us to go, there's a very elegant and convenient solution that we could have this. And wouldn't you agree that that solution is right in front of them? Scottish independence, which is on the rise, and we'll be quite happily out of this place.
My honourable friend is right, and I think the government benches know that a referendum's coming. We should really just get on with it.
Hear, hear.
This bill, after all, is giving Westminster direct spending control in Scotland in devolved areas, in health, in education, in housing, in transport. And the people of Scotland know from long and bitter experience the Tories can't be trusted to spend money in Scotland. The Tories will look after their own interests. They will never support Scotland's interests, as tonight just demonstrates. The passing of this bill gives the Tories free rein to bypass Scotland's Parliament and bypass the democratic priorities of the Scottish people. Madam Deputy Speaker, that democratic principle, the right to choose our own form of governance, comes to the very heart of what is at stake if the Tories force this legislation through tonight. They can try denying it all they like, but it's the Tories themselves who are breaking the constitutional settlements that have democratically supported across these islands. This legislation rips apart Scotland's claim of rights. It's enshrined the sovereign right of the Scottish people to determine the form of government best suited to their needs. That claim of right was debated on an SNP motion in the last Parliament and was passed without objection. It is a long-held principle that Scotland's sovereignty in Scotland rests with the people of Scotland and not with Westminster. That historic right has its roots in the Declaration of Arbroath and formed the basis of the determination in the case of McCormick versus the Crown by Lord Cooper when, as Lord President of the Court of Session, he gave his opinion that said that the principle of unlimited sovereignty of Parliament is a distinctly English principle that has no counterpart in Scottish constitutional law. That principle of the sovereignty of the people of Scotland is under attack with this bill.
Would the honourable gentleman give way?
I'll happily give way.
Would the honourable gentleman agree with me that there are plenty of reasons to oppose this legislation that don't necessarily involve the case for Scottish independence?
Well, the fact is that what is happening as a consequence of the attack on Scotland's Parliament and the powers of our Parliament, that people in Scotland are making that determination that they wish our country to be independent and they wish our country to become independent as soon as possible. This bill undermines the settled will of the people of Scotland who voted in a referendum on the basis of our Parliament having control over spending in devolved matters. It is that fundamental, it is that serious that is happening right now. This is a defining moment. The UK government are attempting to block the sovereign right of the Scottish people to decide Scotland's future. Madam Deputy Speaker.
It's great to hear him remind the House that the principle of the sovereignty of Parliament is a purely English doctrine. Does he agree with me that in seeking to interfere with the inherent supervisory jurisdiction of the Court of Session, this bill also potentially breaches Article 19 of the Treaty of Union between Scotland and England?
It may well be right that that is the case. My learned friend has much experience of these matters, but I would simply say that this House, if it passes this bill tonight, really just does not seem to care about the issue of law and treaties.
Will the member give way? And I thank the member for giving way. I feel like a Pez dispenser of clarification on the Good Friday Agreement. But in the course of discussing sovereignty, would the members opposite agree, and would the member agree that in fact it's not an ornament in the shelf, but the Good Friday Agreement, being endorsed by the people of Ireland North and South, is in fact sovereign as regards Northern Ireland? And would the member further agree with me that not only does this bill protect the Good Friday Agreement, it offends each of its strands and it offends its principles of democratic process, respect for differences and the rule of law?
Absolutely. I fundamentally agree with my honourable friend, and we all look on with alarm at what could happen if the Good Friday Agreement is disrespected, and we give every good wish to our friends in the island of Ireland that the maintenance of peace is maintained, but there is no question that this government is playing with fire. Madam Deputy Speaker, time is short, so I must now move on. it is pretty ironic that at the very same moment that the Tories are robbing the Scottish people of their sovereign rights, those behind this power grab are using the very same arguments on sovereignty to impose their extreme Brexit agenda. In February, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster lectured us, and I quote, "The experience of history tells us that the countries with the maximum amount of control over their own destinies are the best equipped to succeed economically and indeed to secure a greater degree of equity for all their citizens." If the Minister holds this to be true, then it ought to be true for Scotland. And yet, through this very bill, the UK government are trying to rob those rights and those powers from Scotland's democratically elected Parliament. The best that can be said for this UK government is that they at least wear their hypocrisy on their sleeves. When it comes to sovereignty, I've been looking back at what the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster has said over the years. He said on the 14th of October 2012, when talking about the EU, "Give us back our sovereignty or we will walk out." If he thinks this matter is so crucial, why is he leading his government to attack the Scottish Parliament? Why is he disregarding our sovereignty in Scotland? Madam Deputy Speaker, we will push our amendment tonight to defend democracy, to defend Scotland's interests, to defend this barefaced attack on our Parliament's powers. We know that the vast majority of Scotland's MPs and the Scottish public will be with us. What of the 6 Scottish Tories, though? Will they stand up for Scotland? Will they stand up for our Parliament? Tonight is their chance to join with us, to reject this power grab, to reject Westminster trampling over the devolution settlement, to respect that the Scottish Parliament should determine spending on devolved matters. A failure to join with us will show that the so-called Scottish Tories have reverted to type, reverted to what they have traditionally been, hostile to devolution. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me conclude by putting this in context. Over the last number of years, Scotland's people have watched on as Westminster ignored our views on Brexit, launched power grab after power grab and undermined our democratic rights. This legislation is the last straw. It leaves us with only one option and only one choice. A growing and consistent majority of our people have now come to the same conclusion. They know that the only way to defend Scotland's parliaments and powers is through independence. Madam Deputy Speaker, the words of Charles Stewart Parnell, who used to sit just 2 rows back here, still ring true. Tonight I direct these words to the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and I will do this 2 lines in Gaelic and then give an English translation. Hanil Coreeg Dunyachruchen Achuet un Ustis Duha. Hanil Coreeg Dun Ahishta Achuchihuich Yev Shiv Kufada Risho Agus Hanai and Batshu. Madam Deputy Speaker, no man has the right to fix the boundary to the march of a nation. No man has the right to say to his country, "Thus far thou shalt go and no further."
The original question was that the bill be now read the 3rd time, since when an amendment has been proposed as on the order paper. The question is that the amendment be made. Sir William Cash.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The honourable gentleman who's just spoken said that he was going to push his amendment. I think he's pushed the patience of this House to breaking point. I would simply say, in the very few seconds that I have left, that as regards the speech of the Right Honourable Member, the member for Doncaster, he completely failed to answer my question. The Labour Party have, in fact, on a number of occasions broken international law. He knows it. And he couldn't answer and didn't attempt to answer my question whether he thought that the Iraq war was lawful or not. And the bottom line is that these completely irrelevant questions which are being raised in relation to breaches of international law are completely unfounded. The reality is that this country has on occasions in the past, in its own national interest, for the sake of preserving its sovereignty and its economic sovereignty, have in fact had to break occasionally international obligations. There is no doubt about that. But equally, and by the same token, this bill is about the sovereignty of the United Kingdom and preserving the economic sovereignty of the internal market and doing what it can to preserve the Union in all its character and its territoriality. The honourable gentleman, right honourable gentleman, shakes his head. But the bottom line is that we have now got this bill through. It's been gone through 100 votes time and time again. This proves the point. This is the endorsement of the referendum. It's the endorsement of the manner in which the British people voted in the general election. And that is the truth. We have won, and we will continue to pursue the independence of this country and to maintain its sovereignty.
I must now put the questions necessary to bring proceedings to a conclusion. The question is that the amendment be made. As mayors that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Division, clear the lobby. The question is that the amendment be made. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Tell us for the ayes, Owen Thompson and Richard Thompson. Tell us for the noes, Michael Tomlinson and Maggie Throop. Order. Order.
The ayes to the right, 256. The noes to the left, 348.
Ayes to the right, 256. The noes to the left, 348. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. The question is that the bill be now read the third time. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Division, clear the lobby. Order. The question is that the bill be now read the third time. As many as that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no.
No.
Tellers for the ayes, Maggie Throop and Michael Tomlinson. Tellers for the noes, Bambos Sharalambo and Jeff Smith. Lock the doors. Order. Order.
The ayes to the right, 340. The noes to the left, 256.
The ayes to the right, 340. The noes to the left, 256. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Unlock. Point of order, Kate Green.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. All members must be as accurate as possible when they speak in the House, and none more so than Cabinet Ministers. Today, in response to my questions following his statement, the Education Secretary twice made statements which were incorrect. First, he said, and I quote, "We have made £100 million available for universities to ensure that youngsters have digital access." That wasn't accurate, Madam Deputy Speaker. The £100 million funding is for devices for schools and some FE providers, not for universities. And the Secretary of State was wrong in what he said. And he also said that individual students could seek additional maintenance support from the Student Loans Company, and as far as I can tell, that's not right either. When I asked the Secretary of State about digital access this afternoon, he said he was sorry I'd missed the announcement. Well, I'm sorry that he's apparently wrong about the detail of his portfolio. Have you had any indication, Madam Deputy Speaker, that he will return to the House to correct the record on these matters?
I appreciate the point that the Honourable Lady is making, but it's not a point of order for the Chair. It's rather a continuation of the debate that took place this afternoon. But the Honourable Lady has taken the opportunity to make the point that she wishes to draw to the attention of the House and no doubt to ministers, and she has succeeded in so doing. We now come to motion number 5 on exiting the European Union, international trade. Minister to move.
I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order papers, members of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. And motion number 6 on compensation. Minister to move.
I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order papers, members of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. And motion number 7 on employment. Minister to move.
I beg to move.
The question is as on the order papers. Members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Or the contrary, no. No. Aye. Division. There's a necessity for division. The division is deferred until tomorrow.
I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Greg Clark.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the COVID pandemic, unknown to the world 9 months ago, has required businesses, people and government to make huge and rapid changes to the way we live our lives with a speed that was unthinkable before the coronavirus struck. Nightingale hospitals were constructed within days and made capable very quickly of accommodating hundreds of ventilated patients. Supermarkets doubled their capacity for online deliveries. The government introduced the coronavirus job retention scheme and within days was paying the wages of 4 million employees. Advice was given that those who could should work from home, giving rise to an instant leap in the take-up of video conferencing through services like Zoom and introducing millions of people to the previously unexperienced sensation of being exhausted by staring at a screen all day. For all of the tragedies and the privations of the last few months, it has been a time of agility and innovation in the way that we do things. Yet through this period of the most tumultuous change that any of us have experienced during our lifetimes, one thing that has proved impervious to alteration, a monument to inflexibility, is the railway season ticket. My constituents in Tunbridge Wells, High Brooms and Paddock Wood, if they take a southeastern train to work in London, face the same bill of fare that they've had since the 1950s. They either have to buy a 7-day-a-week season ticket from Southeastern, or they have to buy daily tickets at the highest fare for the journey, with no discount for frequent and regular travellers. Happily give way to the honourable gentleman.
Thank the right honourable gentleman for bringing this forward. I just want to maybe bring to his attention something that's been coming to me. Does the right honourable member not agree that with many students, especially in my constituency and indeed in your constituency, the honourable members I mean, and also in other constituencies, that commuting to their university is essential, that if they are to put in lockdown, they do then lose their weeks on their rail cards. And as airlines have been flexible, so must rail and other transport providers.
Makes a very good point that it's not only workers who commute. There are many students who commute into the capital and indeed other cities around the country, and I dare say in Northern Ireland too, so I'm grateful for his point. But the economics of the situation are this. A standard class season ticket from Tunbridge Wells costs £4,928 a year, a large amount of money. The price of a daily standard peak return ticket is £39.90. This means that someone travelling 3 days a week to London for 47 weeks of the year must pay £5,626. In other words, it costs over £700 more to travel 3 days a week than 5 days a week or even 7 days a week. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a ludicrous anachronism and an outrageous injustice that we have had the same fare structure for workers in 1920 as we did in 1950. And there are many reasons why this is no longer tolerable. First, even before COVID, the pattern of working life has changed since the 1950s. Many people work less than 5 days a week from a workplace in a city centre. Either they work part-time or they don't need to travel every day. How can it be that our railways have not noticed a change that has been happening for decades? Second, people who work part-time usually earn less money than people who work full-time. So to penalise the poorest workers is a regressive policy that adds to poverty and is a barrier to work. Third, more women than men work, or in some cases wish to work, part-time. The standard fares policy means that it costs them more to do so. And so, because pay is still not equal, women have a further obstacle to accessing good jobs and careers thrown up in front of them by a fares system that can make it too costly to take up opportunities. And the same is true, Madam Deputy Speaker, but worse, for disabled people and people as they get older. Fourth, The fare structure flies in the face of the advice that the government is currently giving to curb the spread of COVID. Work from home if you can, it says. For many people, this means going into the office less, perhaps going for important meetings or to train newer and younger colleagues, perhaps, and working from home more. That pattern is not supported if it's cheaper to travel 5 days a week than it is 3 days a week. And fifth, it hampers our recovery from the economic consequences of COVID. Our businesses and their staff need to be flexible and adaptive. Instead, working patterns will be formed not by what's ideal for the business and the worker, but to conform to an antiquated fares system. I'm very happy to give way to my honourable friend.
Thank you. Does my honourable friend agree with me that rail operators must act responsibly during the pandemic to ensure passengers do not have to choose between a journey on an overcrowded train and paying the top rates for anytime travel tickets? On the West Coast line, for example, travel between London and Stoke-on-Trent rises from £53 to £129 after 3 p.m. and only returns to £53 at 7 p.m. when the train is packed. Surely a temporary suspension of peak fares whilst the country is in a national health emergency is the right thing to do to protect rail travellers.
Well, I agree with my honourable friend to this point. This is a time in which we must display the same flexibility and innovation and responsiveness that we have and we've had to in so many other areas of life, and we should not be bound by structures that we inherited. So I say to the Minister, it's time now to make this change. It doesn't have to be this way. If we can bring in a job retention scheme within days of the need being identified, if we can invent a scheme in July to help thousands of restaurants attract back millions of customers in August, if businesses can switch to conducting meetings online virtually overnight, then surely we're more than capable of introducing, without further procrastination, a train ticket to meet the needs of part-time and flexible workers. There's no shortage of models available. A ticket that allows any 3 days in 7, for example, a ticket that permits travel any 12 days in a month, at the most basic, a carnet system that gives a discount on the purchase of multiple peak time tickets to be used within a limited period. Now, my honourable friend, the member for Chatham and Aylesford, wrote with all Kent MPs to the Managing Director of South Eastern at the end of July. The Managing Director, Mr Statham, replied that South Eastern had submitted proposals for flexible ticketing to the Department for Transport and is waiting for the Department's authorisation under the Emergency Measures Agreement. So I say to the Minister, please act now. As the Transport Secretary said last week, we are in a different era. The government is, which is to say we are, paying for the railway. With these COVID-changed circumstances, very few people are going to be paying for an annual 7-day-a-week ticket anytime soon. That money is simply not coming in. Of course I'll give way to the Honourable Lady.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've been hearing from constituents for years who are desperate for part-time season tickets, and I agree with the Honourable Gentleman who's making some brilliant points about this. And I've been speaking to the member for Slough, our Shadow Rail Minister, and he's in agreement with me. With the job market about to be reeling for years and years in a post-COVID environment, does the Honourable Gentleman agree with me that the government must do everything and anything it can, such as allowing part-time season tickets, or at least thinking about that, to allow businesses to create new jobs as well as flexible part-time working?
Yeah, Honourable Lady, I think, as I've said in my speech, I think this is a problem that has persisted for too long. We need to catch up with the 21st century. But now is a particular moment to make that reform so that people can go back to work according to the needs of their employer, but also to respect the advice to stay and work at home where possible. And so, whereas the launch of a flexible commuting ticket, by contrast to a full season ticket, 5 days or 7 days a week, a flexible commuting ticket is something that is likely to be bought by commuters here and now, and can actually increase revenue to the railway and to the taxpayer while fighting COVID by supporting people not going into the office every day and providing a long overdue journey of the railway fare system to have a rendezvous with working life in the 21st century. Now, I suspect that the Minister whose talents I admire, will be briefed to buy time and to say that these things must be examined in greater detail. But my admiration of him extends to the knowledge that he's embraced his portfolio with enthusiasm and ambition. He doesn't need to be a captive of the standard advice that has been given for years on this subject. He can make a difference, and make a difference during the next few weeks ahead. And if he does, he will go down in railway history as one of the reformers, if he is the minister who brings railway ticketing into modern times, and I urge him to do it.
Minister Chris Heaton-Harris.
Madam Deputy Speaker, well, it's very kind, but compliments sometimes, I think a comedian said, doth butter no parsnips, and I shall do my best to explain the government's position on this, but I firstly want to congratulate my right honourable friend, the member for Tunbridge Wells, for securing this debate on the plans for future flexible season tickets and rail ticketing, and to all the members from Strangford, Canterbury, Stoke-on-Trent Central who've made their contributions this evening. Transport is something which affects most, if not all, of the people in this room today, and it is an area that this government is committed to improving. As members present, we are all well aware that improving our rail network is at the heart of the government's plans to build back better and to boost Britain's economy coming out of the pandemic. The government is investing record levels in rail funding to deliver the biggest rail modernisation programme for over a century. In fact, we're spending £48 billion, a statistic I repeat ad nauseum to everybody I meet, between 2019 and 2024 to improve rail services for passengers and freight customers whilst maintaining current high levels of safety and reliability. My right honourable friend will also know that in his address of the 22nd of September, the Prime Minister emphasised the importance of taking steps to stop the spread of the coronavirus. The government encourages those who can work from home to do so, and we continue to advise passengers to consider active travel alternatives such as walking and cycling. To ensure the safety of those who need to use public transport, we have issued comprehensive guidance on the steps operators should take to access and address the risks of coronavirus in the transport sector across England. The rail industry has implemented measures to give passengers confidence in travelling by rail, from enhanced cleaning to redesigned station flows that facilitates social distancing wherever possible, to the provision of additional staff and the installation of face-covering vending machines at key stations, to volunteers welcoming people to stations to remind them to wear their face coverings. The government has also announced that on the 21st of September that we have extended support to keep trains running through the pandemic and ended rail franchising. Emergency Recovery Measures Agreements, or ERMAs as they are more commonly known, place operators on far more demanding management agreements with tougher performance targets and lower fees than the previous emergency measures agreements. These fees are of a maximum of 1.5% of the cost base of the franchise before the pandemic began. To help comply with current and changing public health guidance, we've also asked operators to run an almost full capacity service to ensure that there is space to help passengers travel safely and socially distance where possible to continue to combat the threat of COVID-19. Looking forward to the post-COVID recovery, we need to build a rail network which is fit for the future. To deliver this, we're placing some focus on punctuality and performance, investing massively in infrastructure to level up the country, and indeed considering how we can provide simpler, more flexible ticketing to deliver a better deal for passengers and deliver a deal for passengers that works in the new environment that they will be travelling in. South Eastern continues to deliver for passengers, recording actually 93.2% in the latest public performance measure of punctuality, with 83% of journeys rated as satisfactory or good in the National Rail Passenger Survey in spring this year. They also offer a range of products which passengers can choose to buy to suit their own requirements. As my right honourable friend listed, they've also got a key smart card which allows tickets to be downloaded from home via an app, but they do not offer, at this point in time, a flexible season ticket. For the commuter, season tickets are still a great way to save on travel and are available on the smart card, as I said. But it is worth buying a season ticket if you do make the same journey 3 times a week or more. Early bird discounted season tickets are also available for early morning commuters travelling into London from some areas in Kent, providing even greater value for money. My right honourable friend will know that flexible season ticketing has long been an ambition of this government. Progress has been made with many train operators around the country having launched flexible products that can provide passengers who work or commute part-time with a better deal, something that is obviously very important to this government. The operators C2C, Chiltern, East Midlands, Gatwick Express, Greater Anglia, Northern, South Western, GTR and West Midlands Railway are now all offering some form of flexible season ticket or carnet on at least some of their services. However, as my right honourable friend knows, flexible season tickets are not yet available across all train services, and the level of discount and terms and conditions of these tickets can vary between operators. I appreciate how the lack of availability of flexible season tickets might be frustrating for some passengers. The pandemic has, of course, led to a lot fewer rail journeys being made, and the Office of National Statistics reported 32% of Great Britain's working population are working at home for at least some of the time. The government recognises, as everyone does, that the pandemic is likely to cause a fundamental change in commuting patterns in the future, and that this is very likely to have long-term effects on commuter behaviour.
Will my honourable friend allow me?
Of course.
I'm very grateful. My honourable friend read out a tantalising list of rail operators where there is some form of flexible ticketing available for commuters. But as you said, this is not available to southeastern customers. Can you explain why?
I shall come to that in a moment, actually, in my words. But yes, I'll happily explain why in a moment. And this is why fares and ticketing needs to evolve to meet the needs of modern-day passengers, both to ensure it can support those people who want to work from home more often in the future, but also to provide a flexible and affordable ticket to allow commuters and others the freedom to travel into work when it suits them, to discuss ideas in the office, grab a coffee with colleagues, socialise in our towns and cities, whatever it may be. To deliver this, we have been working proactively with the rail industry, including train operators and the rail delivery group, to try and ensure better value and convenience for part-time and flexible commuters. This June, we sought proposals from the train operating companies, such as the one outlined by my right honourable friend, and these were received by the department over the course of the summer. My officials are in the process of carefully considering the proposals, ensuring that they will offer value for money, will give passengers what they want, and will be deliverable and will work for the future. We will continue to consider these proposals, balancing better deals for passengers with the cost to taxpayer. We also, obviously, have to get the approval of Her Majesty's Treasury for such a scheme. And as a former Treasury Minister, my right honourable friend will understand that the taxpayer is spending a tremendous sum of money maintaining a rail service currently that is clean, reliable, resilient, and where people can travel where possible in a socially distanced manner. As government guidance changes to reflect the situation we find ourselves in, the rail industry also has to change its plans. I'll happily give way to my honourable.
Thank you. He makes a very valuable point, and I think once a Treasury Minister, always a Treasury Minister, and the bill for the industry, indeed all the support that is taking place, will have to be met. He highlighted in the list described by my right honourable friend from Tunbridge Wells as a tantalising list of rail franchises operating a flexible system. The Harrogate line operates such a system in a carnet-based approach, buy 10 tickets and pay for 9. The pattern of commuting is going to be fundamentally different, I think, after we recover from this coronavirus. So is this going to be part of the long-term planning to be built into franchises or to whatever model we will see after we return back to a more normal mode of operation?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and as a former rail minister, he knows the lovely conversations that I had between departments over these sorts of things, and it is absolutely right that we are keen to introduce flexible ticketing throughout the system where possible, but I think it's quite difficult to judge now what would be the right product to tempt commuters back to our railways before we actually know how we're going to extract ourselves from a second peak in the pandemic. But we do know there is much interest amongst passengers in these products, including from the representations which honourable members and right honourable members have made directly to the department. But we do need to look in detail at the important and complex issues such as pricing, impacts on revenue, and whether these proposals are properly future-proof before launching them. We cannot say at this stage what the longer-term impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic will be on commuter behaviours, and we need to ensure that any steps we take now can flex and adapt to changing circumstances. Of course, these are unusual and unprecedented circumstances, and timing is extremely important. But as I've said, we are currently advising office workers who can work effectively from home to do so. However, we also need to ensure that our rail network is ready to adapt and able to provide good value and convenient options for those now wishing to travel, and especially for those who wish to come back to our network in the future when they can, to help support the recovery of our town and city economies. We also know that there are still many people, such as our key workers, who rely on the trains to get to their place of work right now. And that's why our immediate focus is on ensuring that we keep the railway available and safe for those who require it within the measures that the COVID measures that I set out earlier in this speech. I'm going to conclude by saying we are talking to South Eastern in many, many ways, but and I completely understand, as I'm sure my right honourable friend does, how important that rail plays for so many people in his constituency. He's highlighted the need for more flexible rail ticketing to cater for changed commuting patterns. And I want to reassure him and the House that we are actively working with the rail industry to develop those proposals to meet this need and ensure the railway is fit for the future. We do want to ensure that we enable operators to offer the right range of tickets to improve the lives of commuters around the country, including those in my right honourable friend's constituency. And I hope I'll be able to, at some point in the near future, come to the House and update it of its progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as that opinion say aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.